Hello, today we are going to take a look at a psychological horror movie. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel if you like watching movie recaps. We find movies that are fun to watch and summarize them for you. Watch this video at your own discretion. Spoilers ahead. Kate, a recovering alcoholic who recently gave birth to a dead baby, is seen with her psychotherapist where she reveals that she is traumatized by the stillbirth. Kate tells the therapist that she is thinking of adopting a child as it will help with her recovery. Kate and John have two children, their 5-year-old deaf daughter Max and 12-year-old son Daniel. That night on bed, Kate tells John that she is going through with the adoption. Few days later, they drive to a local orphanage and meet with Sister Abigail. John sees a girl painting in a classroom and she tells him about the story behind the painting. Kate and Sister Abigail also enter the room, and they seem to like the little girl. At Sister Abigail's office, we learn that the little girl is a 9-year-old Russian named Esther. The couple who had brought her to the US had died in a fire, and John and Kate take pity on her. Weeks later, they pick Esther up from the orphanage and drive to their home. Esther meets with Max and she seems to like her, but Daniel seems to dislike her. Daniel clearly gets jealous of her when she gives John a thank you hug. One night, John and Kate begin to have sex and Esther interrupts them with Max. The two girls want to sleep with their parents and Esther goes to sleep next to John. The next day, as the kids are playing around in the snow, Daniel shoots a pigeon with a paintball gun. They walk over to the pigeon and see that it is injured. Esther hands over a large rock to Daniel and asks him to kill it. When he refuses, she ends up killing the pigeon. At school, Esther is constantly bullied by her peers for being different. Back at home, while teaching Esther to play piano, Kate asks her about the bullying at school, but Esther says that she doesn't want to talk about it. Kate tells Esther about the baby she lost. Then she takes her to the roses where the baby's ashes were scattered. After the kids go to bed, Kate and John have sex in the kitchen and Esther appears suddenly. The next day Kate goes to her room to talk about what she saw, but Kate becomes suspicious when Esther expresses far more knowledge of sex than expected of a child her age. Kate tells John that they need to take Esther for therapy, but John thinks that Kate is overreacting. John takes the kids to a park nearby and Esther's bully from school comes to the playground as well. When she tries to go on a slide, Esther pushes her from behind breaking her leg, and Max witnesses the whole incident. During dinner, John wants to know what happened, but Max tells him that the girl just slipped, fearing that Esther would hurt her too. Kate gets a call from Sister Abigail while she is with Esther at the supermarket. She tells the sister everything that has been happening. Back at home, Kate sees Esther playing the piano beautifully. Upon asking why she pretended not to know how to play, Esther tells her that she did it for her benefit. That night, Kate and John argue about Esther's behavior and Esther smirks hearing them from her room. The next day Sister Abigail visits them at their house to check on Esther. She warns Kate and John that tragic events and accidents always seem to happen around Esther. Esther hears the conversation and asks Max for help, telling her that she doesn't want the mean nun to take her away. Esther gets a revolver out of John's safe and points it at Max, threatening her to do as she says. When Sister Abigail leaves, Esther takes Max to a bridge and pushes her onto the road, causing Sister Abigail to crash her car. To keep her from returning, she bashes her head in with a hammer. Then she forces Max to help her hide the body, and hides the evidence in Daniel's treehouse. Daniel sees them at the treehouse but Esther sees him too. Later that night, she goes over to his room with a knife and threatens to kill him if he tells his parents. Kate learns that Sister Abigail did not return to the orphanage. The police discover her body where Esther left it and they inform the couple that they do not have any suspects yet. Kate is suspicious of Esther and becomes further convinced that Esther's behavior is sinister, but John believes she is being paranoid. Kate contacts the orphanage in Russia to find out about Esther, but she learns that there are no records of her prior to her arrival in the US. That night, Esther comes into the kitchen saying she has a gift for Kate. Esther gives Kate a bunch of roses picked from the baby's grave, and Kate is horrified. She roughly grabs Esther's arm, asserting that she did this on purpose. Later, Esther breaks her own arm in the garage and calls John for help, blaming Kate and causing further strife in their marriage. Kate buys 2 bottles of wine out of frustration, but determined to stay sober, she ends up spilling it in the sink. The next day, when Kate drives the kids to school, Daniel drops his books and Kate goes to help him. Esther then releases the brakes in the car while Max is still inside, causing it to roll into oncoming traffic. Kate tries to tell John and her therapist about Esther, but John points out the wine bottle Esther had found in the kitchen, causing John and Kate's therapist to think that Kate is drinking again, though she is not. Kate tries to tell them her side of the story, but they don't believe her. They suggest she return to rehab, and John threatens to leave her and take the kids if she refuses. Desperate to prove the truth, Kate goes into Esther's room and finds her Bible hidden inside a toy. She discovers pictures of different men hidden within the pages, and finds the word Sarn Institute on the front page and Googles it. She calls the number online and discovers that Esther came from an Estonian mental hospital and not from an orphanage. When Daniel learns about Sister Abigail's death from Max and searches the treehouse, Esther walks in and pours fuel all over. She then sets the place on fire and locks the door while Daniel is still inside. Daniel gets on the roof crying for help and then slips and falls on the ground. Kate arrives on the scene before Esther could kill Daniel. Daniel is seriously injured, and while in the hospital, Esther goes to Daniel's room and attempts to kill him again. But the alarm in his room goes off and the doctors save him. Kate, whose suspicions have been confirmed, strikes her and screams at her to stay away from her children, but she is restrained and sedated. That night, John gets drunk in the living room. Esther arrives dressed up as an adult woman and attempts to seduce John. John finally realizes that Kate had been right all along about Esther's behavior. When he threatens to send Esther back to the orphanage, she goes into her room crying. At the hospital, Kate is contacted by a doctor of the Sarn Institute who tells her that Esther is actually a 33-year-old woman who has a rare hormonal disorder that stunted her physical growth, and she has spent most of her life posing as a little girl. The ribbons she wears around her wrists and neck have been hiding scars from trying to break out of restraints during her time at the institute. Lena removes her disguise, revealing she wears dentures to hide bad teeth. She then removes all of her makeup to reveal her true identity. When John goes to check on her, she stabs him to death. Max sees her and she goes after her next. Kate rushes home and finds John dead. Realizing that Max is in trouble, she looks for her. Lena attempts to shoot her, wounding her arm. After Lena opens fire at Max, Kate breaks through the roof above and lands on top of her, knocking her out. Kate and Max flee as the police arrive, but Lena attacks Kate near the frozen pond, hurling them onto the ice. Max tries to shoot Lena but shatters the ice, sending Lena and Kate underwater. Kate climbs out, with Lena clinging to her legs. Lena pleads with Mommy to save her, while hiding a knife behind her back. Kate doesn't fall for Lena's pleading and screams that she's not her mother, before kicking a stunned Lena in the jaw, breaking her neck and killing her. Lena sinks into the icy pond as Kate and Max are met by police.